Hey everyone, welcome back to Midnight Confessions. I'm David, and tonight's story is one that still keeps me up some nights. Because sometimes the places that call to us aren't meant to be found. Guys, let's dive into the story. This one came from Alex Morgan. I never believed a house could remember. I used to think that was just something people said, an old superstition from those small towns where history and myth got mixed up. But after what happened, I know better now. It started when I was offered a job in real estate, small town property sales in the kind of forgotten corners of Pennsylvania where half the houses leaned a little too far into the wind. The listings were always the same. Big old Victorians, barns half swallowed by vines, and the occasional abandoned property that no one had lived in for decades. One in particular caught my eye. Or maybe I should say, it called to me. It was a two-story house on a back road outside of town, surrounded by oak trees so old they twisted like they were trying to hold the place in place. The listing said it had been empty since the early 90s. Local records showed the family who owned it just disappeared one night. No forwarding address, no sale, no police report. It should have been a red flag, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to go there. The first time I pulled up, I noticed something strange. My phone, which had full bars on the drive, went completely dead the moment I parked. No signal, no GPS, just silence. Even the woods around the place felt wrong. You know that feeling when sound doesn't echo right? When even your footsteps sound too close? That's how it felt walking up the porch steps. The door was still locked, and the key from the realtor's office fit perfectly. When I stepped inside, the smell hit me. Not rot, not mold, but something metallic and sharp like the air after lightning. I told myself it was just old wiring, but I could hear it, a faint hum somewhere deep inside the walls. And then I heard my name. At first I thought it came from outside, a woman's voice, soft, like she was calling from the woods. But when I opened the door again, there was no one, just the trees swaying in the wind, and that strange quiet that eats sound whole. That was the first night. I should have left it alone. But the more I thought about the house, the more it got under my skin. I went back 2 days later, just to take photos for the listing, I told myself. Except this time, when I stepped inside, the house didn't feel empty. The air felt heavier, the shadows under the staircase looked deeper, and on the wall near the living room, something new had appeared. A single handprint, small, faint, smudged into the dust like it had been waiting for me to see it. I took a picture and checked my phone. 2:17 p.m. Then my phone screen flickered and the photo disappeared. I don't mean it got deleted. I mean it vanished. 1 second it was there, the next, black screen. Then static. I heard the voice again. This time from upstairs. My name, whispered. I froze at the bottom of the stairs. Every instinct told me not to go up there. But I did, because I needed to know. The steps creaked under my weight, and halfway up, the hum started again, low and steady, coming from inside the walls. There were 3 rooms on the second floor, 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. The first bedroom was empty except for a child's rocking horse in the corner. The second door, the one at the end of the hall, was closed. I turned the knob slowly. The room inside was covered in peeling wallpaper, the kind with tiny flowers that had faded to brown. But the bed was still made, a thin quilt pulled tight, a single pillow dented in the middle. Someone had been there recently. And that's when I saw the message on the mirror above the dresser. Written in the dust in small, shaky letters. Don't answer when it calls. I backed away so fast I nearly tripped over the door frame. I left the house without locking up, without looking back, and I didn't stop driving until I hit the main road. I told my boss I was dropping the listing. He didn't ask why. But that night, as I was trying to fall asleep in my apartment, my phone lit up. Unknown number. When I answered, the line was dead. Then a faint hum came through, and a whisper, my name. I hung up immediately. But the next night, it called. By the fourth call, I had stopped sleeping. I stopped eating. My friends noticed. They told me I looked pale, haunted. I didn't tell them what was happening. How could I? Because every time the phone rang, it wasn't a random number anymore. It was the same number, the one listed on the property sheet of that old house, the landline, the one that wasn't supposed to exist anymore. The night I finally went back, I told myself it was just to prove it wasn't real. I even brought a coworker with me, a guy named Ryan. When we got there, the power was out. The whole house was dark except for a faint glow from upstairs. The hum was louder now, vibrating through the floorboards. Ryan called out. No answer. I went first, flashlight trembling in my hand. When we reached the top of the stairs, we saw it. The mirror in the back room, the one with the message. The words had changed. It knows your name. Then my phone buzzed. The same number. I answered before I could think, and the sound that came through wasn't a voice. It was breathing, wet, ragged, too close. Then, a whisper. Look behind you. I turned, and Ryan was gone. Just gone. The flashlight beam hit the far wall, empty. The hum turned into a roar, shaking the floor, and something started pounding from inside the wall. I ran. I don't remember how I made it out, just that when I reached my car, my phone was gone too. The next morning, they found Ryan's car still in the driveway, keys in the ignition, but no sign of him. The police searched for 3 days. Nothing. They asked me to come in for questioning. I told them what I could, but I didn't mention the calls or the voice or the message that appeared that night on my mirror at home. Welcome back. It's been 6 months now. I moved, changed my number, switched jobs, but the calls still come. Same number, same whisper. Sometimes, late at night, I hear the hum again, not from my phone, but from the walls of my apartment. And last week, I woke up to find a small, dusty handprint on my bathroom mirror. I wiped it away. But when I came home from work the next day, it was back, and next to it, written in the dust, "Answer me." Thanks for listening us. If you made it this far, you already know some stories never really end. They just call back. We hope you enjoyed our first story. Stay with us, and if you haven't yet, subscribe and join the darkness. Our second story begins now. The Static in Apartment 12B. It started with a hum, a low vibrating tone that seeped through the thin walls of Apartment 12B, just past midnight. At first, Heather thought it was an electrical fault. Old buildings in Chicago were full of them, loose wires, creaking pipes, the constant buzz of something unseen. But that night, when she pressed the power button on her remote, the TV didn't turn off. It flickered instead. The screen flashed white noise, a cloud of dancing static, as if the machine was gasping for breath. Heather sighed and leaned forward to unplug it. That's when she heard it. A voice, buried deep beneath the crackle. A slow, warped voice, as if someone were whispering her name through a radio tunnel. She blinked hard, shook her head, and unplugged the television. The static died instantly. Just the wind outside, she told herself. Just exhaustion. She'd been working long hours as a nurse at St. Catherine's Hospital, picking up extra shifts after her breakup. The long nights, the silence, the empty apartment, it was starting to wear her down. But when she turned to go to bed, the unplugged TV flickered again. For half a second, just long enough to show the faint outline of a figure standing behind her reflection in the screen. The next morning, Heather brushed it off. She convinced herself it was a trick of the light. The day was routine: coffee, bus, hospital. Her coworker Jake tried to make her laugh during lunch, but she couldn't stop thinking about that flicker, that whisper. When she returned home that night, the hallway lights on her floor were flickering. She lived at the far end, apartment 12B, right next to a unit that had been empty for months. The door was always closed, sealed with a city maintenance sticker. But tonight she noticed the faint sound of static humming behind it. She paused, pressed her ear to the wall. It was unmistakable, the same low, distorted hiss she'd heard from her TV. She stepped back quickly, her heart pounded. "Okay," she whispered, forcing a nervous laugh. "Nope, not doing this tonight." She hurried into her apartment, locked the door, and turned on every light. Later that evening, she decided to watch a movie to distract herself, but the moment she turned on the television, it automatically switched to static. No remote response, no menu, just endless white noise. Then came the voice again, this time clearer. "Heather, open the door." Her throat dried. She stared at the screen, frozen. The static began to pulse, slowly at first, then faster, like a heartbeat. The voice warped again, overlapping with others, hundreds of faint whispers stacking on top of one another, until the sound filled the room. "Open the door." Heather dropped the remote. "Stop it!" she shouted, stepping back. The screen went black. A faint reflection showed her own pale face, eyes wide, hair clinging to her cheeks. Then a knock came from the shared wall. 3 deliberate knocks, evenly spaced. Knock. 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 Her neighbor's apartment was supposed to be empty. By the 3rd night, Heather hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard the static return. Behind the walls, in the hum of her refrigerator, even in the plumbing. She started keeping the TV unplugged, wrapping the cord around it like a dead snake. But one evening, around 2 a.m., the sound came back, without the TV. It was seeping from the wall again, louder than ever. She crept closer, holding her phone's flashlight. And then, as the beam crossed the wall, she saw something etched into the paint. Thin, jagged letters, carved deep into the plaster. "Let me out." She stumbled back, the phone slipping from her hand. The static suddenly stopped. The air fell completely silent. And then inside the wall, a single muffled breath. The next morning, Heather called her landlord, a man named Carl. He sounded annoyed, but agreed to come check it out. Carl arrived that afternoon, carrying a flashlight and a crowbar. The hallway smelled faintly of ozone. When Heather showed him the wall, the carved words, and the faint discoloration spreading across the paint, he frowned. "That's weird," he muttered. "But you said this came from the next apartment?" "Yeah, 12A. But that one's been empty, right?" He hesitated. "It should be," he said. "The tenant passed away a while back. Stroke, I think. Family never claimed the unit." Heather's skin prickled. "What was their name?" Carl shrugged. "I think Helen something? Helen Barlow?" Her stomach dropped. "That was her grandmother's name." That night, she couldn't focus on anything else. She looked up old tenant records online, combed through public listings, and sure enough, Helen Barlow had lived in apartment 12A until her death 3 years ago. Heather had never met her grandmother. Her mother had cut off contact long before Heather was born, but the coincidence gnawed at her. Was this some sick joke? She decided to record the static that night, just to prove she wasn't losing her mind. She set her phone near the unplugged TV and started recording. Then she went to bed. At 3:13 a.m., the static returned. The audio replay the next morning, the static slowly shifted into faint words. "Heather, she left me here." Her blood ran cold. She replayed it again and again until she noticed something else beneath the voice. A faint, rhythmic sound. A heartbeat. Desperate, Heather called Jake that afternoon. She needed someone, anyone, to believe her. He came over reluctantly, still in his scrubs. "Okay, show me," he said, half smiling. Heather hit play on her phone. Static filled the air. Jake rolled his eyes. "That's just audio interference." Then the whisper came. This time, both of them heard it. "Heather, open the door." Jake froze. "Okay, that's not normal." They both stared at the unplugged TV as it flickered to life again, on its own. The screen showed a dark room, illuminated by a single flickering bulb. In the corner, something was moving. A figure, hunched over, pale skin glistening, hair falling across its face. Then the figure turned toward them, slowly, its eyes completely black. Heather screamed and pulled the plug. The screen went black. They ran into the hallway, both gasping for breath. Jake wanted to leave. Heather refused. "If I leave now, it'll just follow me," she whispered. That's when they heard it again, the muffled breathing from inside the wall. Jake pressed his ear against the plaster. "Holy shit," he whispered. "There's someone in there." Carl returned the next morning with maintenance tools. He started cutting into the wall, dust falling as the drywall split. Heather covered her mouth as the opening widened. Behind the wall wasn't insulation. It was another room, a small, secret chamber built between the two apartments. And sitting in a broken wooden chair was the desiccated corpse of an elderly woman still clutching a rosary. On the wall behind her, scrawled in red paint, or maybe blood, were the words, "The static keeps her alive." Police came. Reports were filed. The chamber was sealed off and declared a historical anomaly from the original building plans. Heather tried to move out, but every apartment she applied for rejected her. Jake stopped answering her texts. He'd started having nightmares of static pouring from his eyes and mouth. And 2 weeks later, Heather's building lost power. When it came back, every apartment TV turned on simultaneously, all showing the same channel. Apartment 12B, Heather's living room. She stood frozen in front of the screen, realizing that hundreds of eyes across the building were watching her. The static pulsed again, faster, sharper. Then her reflection on the TV began to move.
But she wasn't. The reflection smiled and whispered, "Let me out." We hope you enjoyed our second story too. Stay with us, and if you haven't yet, subscribe and join the darkness. Our third story begins now. It was early October, the kind of Virginia autumn where the air carries that strange chill that feels heavier than it should. I was 29, living in a quiet corner of Richmond and working remotely as an illustrator. When my Aunt Claire passed away that fall, she left behind an old farmhouse just outside of Appomattox, a place I hadn't seen since childhood. They said she'd died peacefully. I didn't believe that for a second. The house had always been strange, that creaking,
uneven two-story structure that seemed to breathe when no one was there. My family used to joke that it was too big for its bones. The last time I had been inside, I was 11. I remembered the way the wallpaper seemed to move when the lights flickered, and the way Aunt Claire always locked the east hallway at night. When I inherited the house, my mother told me quietly, "You don't have to stay there, Em. Sell it. Some places aren't meant for people anymore." But I couldn't explain it. I felt pulled to that place, drawn, almost magnetically. So one fog-heavy morning, I packed up my old Ford and drove west into the woods. The closer I got, the quieter it became. No birds, no wind, just the low hum of my car engine cutting through thick, wet air. When I reached the property, the house looked smaller than I remembered, but somehow darker, like it had absorbed every ounce of shadow around it. The paint had peeled to bare gray, and ivy strangled most of the outer walls. But the door, a heavy oak thing with brass fixtures, looked new, freshly cleaned, as if it had been waiting. I told myself I was imagining. Inside, the air was stale and sweet, like perfume left in a closed bottle too long. Dust caught the light in sheets. The first few rooms were normal enough. Kitchen, parlor, living room, all untouched. But as I wandered deeper, something strange struck me. The layout didn't make sense. From the outside, the house had 4 visible windows on the east wall. But from the inside, there were only 2. That didn't sit right with me. I tried to laugh it off, but a quiet unease pressed against my ribs. I spent the first 2 nights sleeping in the guest room, though I hardly slept. The floorboards popped like footsteps, and once, around 3 a.m., I swore I heard someone whispering behind the walls. Just 3 slow syllables. "Go back." I told myself it was pipes. It's always pipes, right? By the 3rd day, curiosity got the better of me. I started exploring the locked parts of the house. Aunt Claire's office was filled with old books on architecture and folklore. On her desk was a stack of letters written to herself, or maybe to the house. The handwriting was shaky, and the ink smudged from tears. The wall moved again. The measurements don't match. It keeps trying to make room. The last letter was dated October 31st, 1972, the same year my mother was born. And under that note was a small brass key. The key didn't match any lock on the first floor. I found that out the hard way, pacing room to room. But when I reached the 2nd floor, the east hallway that Aunt Claire used to lock, I saw something I hadn't seen before. A door that shouldn't be there. It was at the very end of the hall, past the old guest room. The wood was pale and unpainted, the handle silver and cold. I pressed my ear against it. Nothing. No sound. Just that strange, hollow stillness that seems to hold its breath with you. I almost walked away, but the key fit perfectly. The moment it turned, I swear I heard the house exhale, like it had been holding something in for years. The room beyond was wrong. It was small, square, and completely windowless. Bare plaster walls, a single wooden chair, and a single hanging light bulb that flickered once, twice, then stayed steady. But what made my stomach twist wasn't what was in the room, it was what wasn't. The wall behind me, the one I entered through, didn't exist anymore. I turned around and it was gone. Just 4 unbroken walls. I pressed my hands against where the door had been, calling out, slamming my palms until my skin burned. Nothing. The air felt thick, and the faint hum of electricity vibrated through the floor. Then I heard it. A slow, dragging sound from behind one of the walls, like something heavy being pulled along concrete. Then again, closer. I backed into the corner. "Who's there?" My voice cracked. I could feel tears gathering, but fear kept me frozen. A voice, faint, womanly, whispered through the plaster. "Don't open it." The wall rippled. I swear to God it moved.
like a muscle twitching under skin. A crack formed, long and jagged. A pale light bled through, soft at first, then burning white. I stumbled backward, covering my face. When the light dimmed, there was a hole in the wall, and beyond it, another room. The same identical room. Same chair, same bulb, same walls. And sitting in the chair was Aunt Claire, or something wearing her shape. Her head hung low, her hair matted and gray. When she lifted her face, her eyes were hollow black pits. Her lips moved like she was mouthing something, but the sound came from behind me. "Why did you open it, Amelia?" I spun around. The wall was gone again, but there she was, standing inches from my face. Her head tilted, her breath cold on my skin. Then everything went dark. When I woke up, I was lying in the hallway outside the east wing. The door was gone, completely. The wall was smooth, no seams, no hinges. I thought maybe I dreamed it until I looked down and saw the brass key still clutched in my hand. I drove back to Richmond that night. For weeks, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing that voice, the whisper through plaster. My reflection in mirrors would flicker for half a second out of sync. Sometimes I'd catch glimpses of that pale door behind me in reflections, just for a blink, then it would vanish. I finally went back one last time. I needed to see it in daylight, needed to prove it wasn't real. The realtor was showing the house to a couple, and I asked if I could just take a quick walk through before they listed it. She smiled. "Of course, but please, don't go near the east hallway. There's some structural issue we haven't repaired yet." When I turned the corner, I froze. There, at the end of the hall, was the door. Fresh paint, perfect hinges, the same silver handle. And this time, the door was slightly open, just enough for me to see an eye staring back from the darkness.